Hello, HCC Eagles, and welcome to today's virtual presentation, session, workshop, seminar, get together, as we have called them now in this COVID world. I'm Ashley Rose Watkins, the Student Life Coordinator for the Northeast College, and we have some great and awesome guest speaker for you today. But first, before we get started, I'm going to pass it over to Professor Smith, who's going to be talking about our Creative Writing Club. So, Professor Smith, it is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for having us today. We are so excited to bring to you in just a moment Aris Kian. But before I do that, just a brief introduction that I'm Courtney Smith. I'm an English professor and faculty advisor to the HCC Creative Writing Club, the Katy chapter. And I'd like to warmly welcome everyone here today to this wonderful event. Before we get started, I do want to let everyone know we have enabled closed captioning for live closed captioning, and a transcript will be available after this recording if you'd like. It is being recorded, so please be aware of that. As a reminder, please make sure to mute yourselves. At the end of today's event, we will have time for a Q&A session with Aris. And at that time, of course, you can drop your questions in the chat, as well as drop your questions there, or unmute yourselves and ask questions at that time. In the meantime, as the performance goes on, we do encourage active participation in the chat. I know as a performer, I love that. I'm sure Aris would appreciate that as well. So please feel free to be interactive in that way, but do remain muted as a courtesy. Again, we just want to point out that HCC Student Life has sponsored various events every week this February to celebrate Black History Month, and the Creative Writing Club is so honored and excited and proud to co-host today's reading featuring Aris Kian. And I do want to let you know a little bit more about the Creative Writing Club before the performance. It is open to any HCC student who is interested in any way in creative writing in any genre. We hold weekly virtual meetings. Right now it's via Teams on Thursdays from 2:30 to 3:30. And we will occasionally meet in person at the Katy campus on some days on some of the months. Meetings generally with the club start with club business, and such as planning, readings, and events such as this one today, as well as workshops with visiting writers like Aris, as well as open mics and talent competitions. At weekly meetings, we generally have a writing prompt and we write for a little while, and then we share work those who wish to for feedback if we'd like. In the past, we've also gone on trips to attend conferences, and we hope to launch a student journal featuring HCC students' work for the students and by the students. I'm going to drop some links in the chat to our weekly meetings, as well as our homepage on the Eagle Experience site, and my email address if you have any questions, any more questions about that. So feel free to reach out at any time. I will say on the 21st of April at the Katy campus, we're going to have an event celebrating National Poetry Month and National Book Day. Please feel free to stop by to get free swag. And I will be writing in real time poems for you on a real old-fashioned typewriter. So I hope you can join us on that day. Again, that's April the 21st. So without further ado, I'm sure you're sick of me. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our very talented performer. Aris Kian is a Houston enthusiast and a student of abolition. Her poems are published with the West Review, Obsidian Lit, Right About Now, and elsewhere. Currently, she engages with the socio-emotional landscape of the metropolitan city in her poems and hates taking the 610 West Loop. She ranks number 10 in the 2020 Women of the World Poetry Slam and is the 2022 recipient of the Imprint Marion Bartholomew Prize in Creative Writing. So without further ado, I'd like to hand the mic, as it were, over to Aris and have her take it away.
Thank you so much, Professor Smith, and for all those who are coordinating. Thank you for everyone at HCC for inviting me here. I'd love to see all of y'all here. It's really exciting to read for y'all. I'm so excited to be a part of this Black History Month feature. One of the things that excite me is thinking about all of the identities that I hold and that I bring to my work. So it's very nice to be recognized in all of those identities and as a writer. I think about the one identity that I've chosen, which is student. I choose, that was the one that I was given to me, and then I kept choosing it over and over. I went to undergrad at UH, graduated from there, and then I also went back to school to get my MFA. And one of the fun things about that is that even though that is an identity I've chosen, it's something that it's the longest one that I've had so far. And somebody asked me if I could haunt any space, what would I haunt? And I said I'd haunt the hell out of academic spaces. I'd smear my blood over wooden bookcases, watch it drip on the covers, cover the names, and red wash these authors out of the canon. I am my own canon, which is to say I am a weapon that houses a magnificent destruction, which is to say I am my own poem. And what is a poem if not the weapon and the gun smoke? If not the trigger and the boom in the twilight after it's long gone? If not a song that clings to your chest at night? If not the words you can't forget? My spirit would belt her own lyrics in the middle of a syllabus, make jazz chords of a lesson plan. I'd like these desks to hum with every argument I started with a white professor on Dickinson or Williams or whoever frost these floors in an ice cold hush when I enter. I am the one you won't forget. I am the one they warned about statistics. How hard it is to enter a room that never had a door for me. How I shouldn't be here. How, in other worlds, my name is chiseled onto more gravestones than degrees. How Black is both the weapon and the gun smoke. But if I walk through walls that tried to shut me out, then I must be the pettiest ghost, ride the tails of my petticoat as I cast a lovesick haunting on every ivory tower, where depression tried to shut me out, where application fees tried to shut me out, where the GRE works hard, but my GOD works harder. 21 credits and 2 jobs were nothing but a soul search. I am a poltergeist of high price and mighty persistence. And what is a ghost, if not a holy hope, if not a wish for a finishing, if not a living reminder of what they thought they could kill? Thank y'all so much. My name is Aris Kian. I have this chat book that I released not too long ago. It's called Blackademic. It's one of my favorite things that I've created, I've collected. One of the things that inspired me to create this collection was, one, I wanted the first collection that I ever put out of my work to be something that I owned all of, like every single, like I paid for someone to create this cover. I went to the store and got it like stapled. I printed all the poems, I compiled it. Every single thing is me. And that's how I wanted the first, my first pieces of work to be in the world. And so if y'all are interested or you like my work, feel free to purchase this via my website. There's if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll be able to get one. It also has a link on the inside to an EP that I created, where you can listen to the poems alongside their musical counterparts, alongside reading. I'm going to read a poem in here called Black Hair Guzzle, which is a poetry form for those who are interested in form. Black Hair Guzzle. My auntie weaves a lesson into my scalp with a rat tail comb and brown gel, slicking down the edges of my girlhood. I sit on my knees, still my head at an angle, and sneak peeks in the mirror clouded under the sheen of girlhood. Barefoot and squinting, I'm placated with floor pillows. She makes me hold my ear and wait for this era of girlhood to end. Knots, cornrows, 2-strand flat twists and drips between my legs. I'm taught to keep my girlhood crisscrossed, unquestioning, quiet and comforted by a slip that covers panty lines so eye lines gloss over. My girlhood is a girl caught under the streetlight, even a girl at all. I flip my box braids, let them sway long over my girlhood, watch them dance below my waist. Aris, let them sit in boiling water. It takes work to unravel my girlhood. The next poem that I'm going to read is called Circus Act, also from my chapbook. Circus Act. Black girl be the best magic trick with how she vanishes under a spotlight like, see the trap door that be the sidewalk, by the train station be the bus stop be the backseat of a rideshare. What I mean is, one time I made it home on a phone with no battery and the crowd was unimpressed. Their groans echoing about the bleachers. Give us fanfare, they chanted, give us fire. For the tightrope walk, which be my nightly commute, I do that in my sleep. A man spits through the peanuts in his teeth and I disappear behind my closed mouth, smile, speed up into the lamplight, swallow the flaming hoops behind my tongue, stunt one. Performed in a continuous night, no matter the hour when she is blindfolded, foldable enough to fit into a trunk or into the hands of a man she learned never loved her back. Black girl, be the best assistant with how she falls victim to a show she never asked to be in. See how she contorts in order to fit through the tightest of holes. See how she be so seen, yet so unnoticed as she slips through the cracks and the crowd looks around, gasps, she's gone, a roaring applause, awaiting the next illusion. Don't worry, she wasn't really there. And everyone settles in their seats a bit more comfortable. Don't see who is going missing one by one in the audience, dwindling until there is only you left with the mess of spit and shells around your feet and no one else to clean it. One of the reasons that I named this book Blackademic is not just because of the identities that I hold and my identity as a student, but because I feel as though there are a lot of lessons that we learn throughout our lives. And I took many of these lessons and put them in this chapbook, things that I learned by just existing in the world, things that I learned from the people that I loved, things that I learned unintentionally from the people who aimed to harm or inflicted harm upon me. One of the things that I'm interested in is thinking about the lessons that we pull out of these and the work that we can create as a means of liberation by understanding the initial plight. So I wrote this poem called Away with the Sun. I'm afraid to have a son, so instead I'll birth a moon. I'd have to watch him grow so far from me, but so bright, his light rippling the mirrored surface of sea. I'd see the craters in his face before it fades in the morning. I'm afraid to have a son, so instead I'll birth a moon. Because what is night if not the opposite of sun? How one always returns, how mine may not, and isn't it telling that the root of the word night is absence, like what's left in my hands when he's here one day and gone the next? Please let him stay in the blue of otherworldliness. Say the womb, say the sky, or even the sea. How many of my ancestors were divers, how they knew that the bottom of the ocean was better to touch with both hands than this ground with bare feet. If I were ever to have a son, I pray he'd be a moon, so I could bury him before the world does. Beneath a blanket of stardust where blue and only blue can touch him, his light, taking millions upon millions of miles to reach the ground where he dies long after I do. Blackademic, feel free to, if you're interested in those poems or you liked what you heard, feel free to purchase it. I have several copies left, so if that's something you're interested in, I would love to share them with you. One of the things that I love about that poem and what inspired me to write that particular poem was that there's something about, I think, the experience that we have as young people with the internet and with our capacity to experience tragedy on a large scale. Before the introduction of the internet, we were given information and given news, and we experienced it in the time that was finally delivered. But now we have bad news at our fingertips. And I'm interested in imagining a world in which our proximity to violence is either miles and miles away, or that we have a better capacity for dealing with such violence, the ones in our communities, the ones in our homes, the ones in the nation state. I was very young whenever I'd heard of Trayvon Martin and the next Mike Brown, and their images being perpetuated over and over in the media. Has stuck with me and stayed in my work. And I'm very, very grateful to the people who have allowed me to grieve in a way that feels community oriented and towards a change. And so I'm interested in the ways in which we implement our ideology and our beliefs and our emotions into the communities that we serve. So I want to amplify a couple of community organizations. When I say I'm a student of abolition, it's that I am interested in learning how to fight for a world in which we do not have to have things like police and have things like prisons, because the needs that necessitate those things are already taken care of. So I am a part of an organization called Mutual Aid Houston, which was running jail support for protesters outside of the George Floyd protest, or protests for George Floyd. And also giving direct aid to people in need. Additionally, the Houston Abolitionist Collective, which is a beautiful, lovely organization that focuses on addressing the needs in Houston to ensure that we don't have a need for police, because people are taking care of the needs of their communities at the root. Additionally, Stop TxDOT I-45, which is fighting the expansion of the I-45 freeway in proponent of to be a proponent of better public transportation. Additionally, right here in Third Ward, I want to amplify the Houston Coalition for Equitable Development Without Displacement, which focuses on halting gentrification in the Third Ward. A lot of my poems have come out of these organizations and have come out of communicating with folks who are involved, and just being a part of those. And I encourage everyone to join an organization in which they feel passionate about doing the work that they want to see in their communities. From an HSED meeting, I wrote this poem, and it's called My Grandmother Say Inside or Outside. My grandmother say inside or outside, but stop letting my cool air out the house. She say, you smell like outside. Say, be inside before the street lights cut on, I come home. Try to walk through the threshold, land at the gas station just up the block and blink. Funny, that's never happened before. Open the door, step foot in a Starbucks parking lot. I try to find the hallway to my bedroom, and a soul cycle class starts where my bathroom used to be. I step back and trip on the B-cycle rack, wonder why I never noticed it there, yell my grandmother's name and hear, please step back from the platform edge. I don't know when the city started seeping into the living room, but I do know that no one knocks anymore. Mayor Turner opened our pantry and started snacking on my Cheetos. Chief Finner cuffed my wrist to the stairwell, which looks a lot like North San Jacinto Street somehow. Outside became inside before I could wash the smell off me, though some will call that progress. The way I scrub my skin to gravel till no one can tell me from the mural right outside the grocery store. Seems like they lift the concrete straight under my feet the second I cross some old street painted some new name. So now My grandmother claims the whole neighborhood, calls the sidewalk her sunroom. Every cross street her countertop, says what's yours is mine. What's mine is still mine, remembers the old brick. The cement on the feeder got that scent of fresh linen and firewood held in the old house. Nothing ever is really gone. Not when you count the ghost, grown familiar with a full mouth of packed down asphalt and rubber tires. Can't find no outside untouched by a memory, or a mother's mother, or a mile of construction swirling with dust. How the outside climbs its way through the cracks, through the screen, through the breeze from the window that blows just so. The next poem I want to read that comes out of my work with community organizing, but also focusing on Indigenous communities within Houston. It's called Land Acknowledgement 3. At the beginning of this one collection that I'd written a land acknowledgement because I was interested in the ways in which we are actually communicating with how we are in solidarity with Indigenous folks. And I wrote a land acknowledgement, and then I'd had a conversation with an Indigenous person who recognized that often land acknowledgements don't do anything past just saying, hey, we took your land, and then leaving it at that. So I'm interested in the work that can be done outside of land acknowledgements and in addition to land acknowledgements. I'd written a land acknowledgement 2, and this is land acknowledgement 3. Let me begin again. All that good gold knows not what we have stoned it into, but we do. What we've slated between the brick, bright with monopoly dollar bills and a barrel down the throat, I know what this is. While we beef more than we bison, pile drive our history into headstones head first and choked at the neck, make no mistake. I don't wonder how Sugarland gained its name. I know about Arcola, that breathing monument of a brutal beginning, how Siena is 17 minutes from Darrington Unit. Did you know the whole city of Rocheron runs its wires, the miles between the prison and the plantation? We brush our teeth in magnesium, dust the sucrose from under our shoes. This shuck and jive circle suck, still can't pronounce Karankawa, still can't say slave without tasting the sweet. See what we've made of this land. Fields of sugarcane still swaying in the southern wind, we utter their names with no assortment of rock roses, no cone flowers, no consequence, just the rot of our teeth with the lick of our tongues, a calcified reparation hanging from the jaw. One of the things that interests me in that poem and in this solidarity with Indigenous and Black folks is thinking about how our relationship to the land is unique but similar. It's alongside each other. The suffering, while particular to each individual group, has an overlap that we're still beginning to unpack. And so I'm interested in doing that kind of work in community with folks of color and folks who are willing to do that work with us. In addition to a lot of the community work that I do, I have a very strange relationship to authority and to power that I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like. And so this is why one of the biggest events that occurred, I think, was it this year or last year? Probably last year. The Astroworld Tragedy really stood out to me. It really did a number on me. And I think the reason that occurred was because one of the ways that was able to happen was the lack of carelessness, the lack of care, the pure unadulterated carelessness from the people in power, from the folks that were supposed to ensure that things were up to code, to ensure that there were safety measures and emergency measures in place for the attendees, were just not in place. And that reminds me of the carelessness that a lot of our authority figures have, not providing safety nets for those who are in need, not providing care and emergency measures for those who would suffer most. And that's including folks who suffered as a result of the Houston freeze last year. That includes folks that are suffering at the hands of the nation state through the means of the police. So I wrote this poem after the Astroworld Tragedy and after the title of one of Travis Scott's songs called "Stop Trying to Be God." When the skyline fractures with light, rainbow red shattering about the sea of open mouths and arms clawing towards your feet, perhaps a bent body is mistaken for worship. Baseline fist upon the cameraman's back above the crowd's supernatural sway. Even the floods, surging beyond the barriers, I too, Travis, could sing the stampeding steps into an anthem of adoration, every cry of my name, amen, amen. To be fair, I bow my head to a God who watched the nails dry in broad daylight. Sometimes I nod when I'm driving past the precinct to a cop out of envy or irony or knowledge of what they do to me under a psalm of sirens and the chant of Miranda rights, a few silver moons dangling above my head with my hands flush behind my back. I can't see the stars downtown anymore, and that is a faithlessness I practice refusing. I too have dreamt of a universe where I am at the center, my mouth agape an entryway, the neon splatter across the asphalt. The myth goes that the stars we see are dying or dead already. And like any good believer, I wish upon them anyway. I pretend to wait for some answer, but I know a black hole when I see it. Whew. One of the things that make me think about this poem is my relationship to, like I said, authority and to police and to our measures of safety. I'd like to believe that we as a nation work very, very hard to ensure our community members are safe. And that requires an open, transparent, generous conversation with community members and people elected to be in power to ensure that those communications are as thorough and useful to all of the community members as possible. As I write about Houston, as I write about my relationship to Houston and my relationship to power and my relationship to folks in power, I realized that one of the ways in which I experience this city, one that I love so much, is also through heartbreak. I have not been heartbroken by anything else more than this city. And I think about that when, of course, I think about like when you're in love with a place and you recognize the places, the aspects of it that does not love you back. That's a very hard thing to contend with. I relate that to, of course, our relationships with people and what we expect of them and what we need from them. And when we don't receive it, what that feels like. That's the relationship I have to this city. And while there's so much good, there's also so much that I contend with. One of the poems that I'm going to read is in that vein, and I love it so much. But it's also one of the it's very hard for me to continue to write. It's called "Every Train I've Ever Run For Has Left Me and." Every train I've ever run for has left me, and still I find myself gripping my straps and pounding pavement, waving down whoever's evening blurs behind the power lines and purpling clouds. I do not wish loneliness of any kind upon any body, but I take it in its truest form. I've leaned, sleep drunk against the change machine, praying for one midnight of no one. stood taut next to lingering hands and too close cigarette breath, lied about my age, laughed away a misstop, centered my gravity before the right jolt plops me into the wrong lap. Everyone's got ghosts at home, don't they? Some trail us from the station first. A flickering lamp has never caused me to question my shadow, but a glance will get me sick at the sight of me. I've wished my existence into the blue seats, that indigo hour of anything goes. I've stilled myself so street light, I couldn't release my breath until morning. I do not wish loneliness of any kind upon anybody, but show me that someone without someone they can't shake. Show me their stop and I'll show you the longest way home. Every back alley exit where I bounce my name off the brick and dodge the echo. Whew. One of the things that I love about writing and writing in general. Also, I'm seeing like y'all's comments. I can't really read them at the moment because of all the things on my screen, but I'm very grateful for all of y'all's responses and y'all's comments and reactions. One of the things that I love about writing and I love about the writing process, especially being in a creative writing group and being a part of a lot of creative writing spaces and a lot of poetry spaces, is the ability to create with just trust and ability in the people that hold me accountable to my words. I think what's so important. I started with Coogslam, which is, you know, the University of Houston's inaugural slam team and slam community that was created on campus. And having a group of folks who were willing to listen to my work and engage with my work and question and interrogate my work was one of the greatest things I've ever experienced. That being said, I'm very excited and I'm very passionate about understanding when work is not finished. And so I have a draft that I would like to share with y'all that I'm turning probably into like 5 different Sistinas, which is going to be a lot of work and a lot of energy. But I think it's important to recognize that even as we are entering our poetry lives and ourselves as poets, or we want to make it a career, recognizing that the work really is never really done, and we're always going to be willing to create and explore language with others. And so I want to do that with y'all. This poem is called Candyman. It's in my upcoming manuscript at this point on my thesis, where I'm interested in our relationships to the land as it relates through this one myth. Houston is a place of like so many myths because we have so many different cultures and communities that are present. And I'm interested in thinking about the Candyman myth. For those who don't know, this figure is a horror figure once created out of Clive Barker's book and was furthered in a 1992, I believe, movie in which this figure, if you say his name in a mirror 5 times, he shows up. He's the ghost of an enslaved person who fell in love with a white woman. And the community found out that he fell in love with a white woman, and they drenched his body in, they like cut off his hand and put a hook in it. And they drenched his body in honey, and they let the bees attack him. And I think this story resonates because I'm interested in the ways in which we relate to the land and heartbreak and our own identities and how they're all in conflict with each other. So this is the first draft of this poem. I call upon you, honey-sick nightmare, master of the mirror. I know the haunting. I know the call towards a white hand, the leaning towards the knife. I want to murder my weight in naysayers, fingers slick around the neck, then lick my honeycomb fists. I'd stick your hand to mine. Your name, each darling kiss, I'd slather my tongue beneath the dip in your jaw. Oh, forest floor darkness, sold sweet underneath the floorboards. I'd wreck my home if it meant you'd haunt it. Take a hook to the lip, suck the sap from your silver, that beaten blade of honey-struck destruction. I'd like to terrorize my city too. Let it teach me a lesson in brutality too. Revenge my way through the sway of magnolias till it smells nothing of sugar and cottonseed oil. Steal all its slop and stalk. Make them stumble over my name, choke on the pulp, spit out every syllable they've learned to swallow whole. Like you, I wrap bees around my rib cage to be held by anything, beg for the buzzing in my stomach, some nuzzle in my chest. Can I ask for something sweeter than this? Lovers who know me from the riverbed, who smile when they see water. I'm afraid I'll see my face in the river's reflection, how saccharine I've become, the slow rot of my teeth. I may not speak, but still crave the cloying, souring behind my jaw. I hate how much I've buried at the root. I've lost my own face in the myth they've made of me, all because I've wanted to be loved too. I know that hunger, how it salts in my cheek. I've worn out the worst in myself when I couldn't tell me from the mirror, me from the man who held it. I too, I've embraced all the worst names I was given. I don't blame you for the blade. I don't blame you for the blood. I don't, God forgive me, even blame you for the river, all the drowned you have dragged. Whew, new-ish for all those who are in the slam communities. I'm really excited about that collection and what can come of it. I'm also just very worried that I'm gonna say his name 5 times in the collection, so we're gonna try to avoid doing that. That's the goal. We're not trying to get haunted out here. But one of the things that I think about in this collection and how heavy heartbreak can become and how heavy heartbreak is, I do want to make sure I'm leaving room for liberation. And it's very easy to forget that, especially because I get very wrapped into the emotion of how the heartbreak makes me feel. I do think it's important to recognize all of the good that I feel in Houston. And so I wrote this poem called Oh Lolas. And there's a very lovely spot in Houston called Lola's Depot on Grant Street that I recommend. And I wrote a sonnet, a rhymed sonnet to it. Oh Lolas, you bumper sticker junkyard, jukebox bright, blasting the pink light anthem of a night gone on too long. Slide my second sour across the bar beneath the frilly B-cup bras hanging like neon chandeliers. I'll chug down your year-round holiday at our snug side table, string lights and sloped wooden bench still jacked from back throat cackles. In moments I think I missed out, I remember you. Backdrop to Polaroid snapped in the blue hour with all of the homies who held me well after the flash. I asked too much of this hell-swept city, and sometimes beneath the ice and maraschino cherries, it answers twice. Another poem that's still in line with liberation, that's still in line with thinking of the good that the city has to offer, is also giving room for self-celebration. And so I wrote this other sonnet, because I love myself a good sonnet, called In Which I No Longer See My Face as Full of Potential. In which I no longer see my face as full of potential. You whole wheat honeysuckle you, stiff stem neck with a sweet turned tooth, high cheek bout hard to swallow, dimples deep in tea tree, shea, aloe, and vitamin E, split bottom lip, ripped rib of Adam, go on. Grin too wide, taste your pumpernickel chin, tongue kiss a mirror like it looks like you, thank God, for the laugh lines that gave birth to laugh lines, for giving love at first sight a second and third chance, for the as is and as is, For the hours you spent angling your face into an unfamiliar gospel, I gift you a glossed and golden conceit. Go on, end your prayers in your name too. The last poem I want to read for y'all is a poem that one comes from a lot of the amazing, brilliant poets before me. I was a part of a slam community called Right About Now, in which I'd learned so much from poet R.J. Wright and Ebony Stewart. And they are the folks that hold a lot of space in my poetry journey, because I'm just very grateful to be able to look up to them as leaders and as icons in the community. And I remember somebody asked me, it was my coach, RJ Wright. He was like, you should write a poem about taking up space. And I was like, for some reason that language really like gets at me, because it makes me ask, like, what was I doing before? Everybody asks me, don't be afraid to take up space. They do not see how much of me already fills the room. First, their idea of me walks in before I did. Said, you should be loud. You should carry the conversation for us. Said, Black girls be a token I can cash out, be the Black friend I can reference when she's not around. My anxiety is always on my left. She thinks faster than I speak. My doubt, she's on my right. She'll take a compliment to chew on and spit back up. My morning, afternoon, and midnight depression form a line in front of me, hold hands, like the saddest game of Red Rover anytime someone comes too close. My fear is composed of three of me. Me, number one, had to convince us to come up here. Me, number two, had to convince us to write this. Me, number three, told one and two I'd fail in every line. There goes the extrovert, who wants everyone to love me by the first handshake. I see the introvert who wants to go home when I finish this poem. My ego is actually 8 Meg the Stallions twerking in the back like, bitch, you the shit. But my self-esteem is Tina Belcher from Bob's Burgers, like, but what if you're not? They tell me to take up space. They do not see that I am more than they could ever fathom. And what is God if not three of themselves in one? Am I not made in their image? If I learned anything from the Trinity, it's that godliness is holding multitudes in oneself, each one capable, each one worthy of praise and lovers of all of us. No one sees how long it took to love all of me, how I fill a room without having to enter, how my name has its own gravitational pull. They tell me, take up space. They do not see that I am a planet, that I contain a universe in all five of me. I am space. I can't take nor have it taken from me. Black girl be down to earth. Black girl be gravity. Black girl don't mind making space for other people. Be lucky I share it with you. I didn't have to do that. Instead of telling me what to take, tell me thank you instead. Thank y'all so much. My name is Aris Kian. It was a pleasure being here with you and reading and sharing poems with y'all. I'm so happy to be here and to hear from y'all. And I'm also like super down to like answer any questions. I know we're moving into a Q&A portion. So thank y'all so much. And I'm gonna read through y'all's very kind comments.
Hey, that was amazing. And at this time, we definitely want to open it up to the audience for questions. So this is your time. You're able to unmute yourselves and we will allow questions and comments at this time. So I see that there's a question in the chat. It states, what's your favorite thing to write about?
Ooh, that's a great question. Hi, Ariana. I would say at this point right now, I'm obsessed with Don Toliver's new album. Well, not new, because I guess it's been out for a couple months. it's Life of a Dawn, and I'm interested in the relationship that it has to Houston. And so I'm thinking, like, right now, I'd love to just write ekphrastic poems in which I'm just listening to the album and then writing poems based off of it. That's been super, super exciting, just listening to Houston artists and letting the work that they share inform my work as I'm like in the city that they're in. And yeah, that's one of my favorite things to write about right now. Houston and Houston artists. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. We love it. We love it. Is there anyone else who has a question? This is your time.
I do. I have a question. That's okay, Aris. I'm sorry if I don't look like I'm looking at you. The
No, you're good.
Welcome to Zoom world and Zoom times, right? In the after times. So in your work, there's, you know, that you the title from the title of your chapbook, as well as multiple poems that I heard you read, and you know, you've you know, have you know, a higher degree, you have a graduate degree, as well as you know, you were a former HCC student. We love to hear that, right? And so, you know, there's that being of the institution, but being within the institution and wanting to change the institution and recognizing the institution as an institution. Does that all make sense? And I see a lot of, I've heard in your poems, there's a lot of push and pull, right? Between the, I guess I haven't completely formulated it, but that push and pull of seeing the past and the present layered with the past, but also looking forward to change. There's just a lot of paradoxes, I guess, that I see in your work, that push and pull of these contradictions that are true at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how does that inform your work? Like, obviously you wrote a chapbook, but how does that awareness and that being of an institution yet wanting to change the institution from the inside, how does that inform your work and your writing?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question, because I think with Blackademic, I was hesitant to think about Blackademic of me being, hey, I am a Black student within an institution, and this is my relationship to the institution. I think with this particular chapbook, I was trying to distance myself from that and thinking more about the education that I receive outside of those institutions and how valuable that is. Especially because, at least with my relationship to poetry, so much of what I've learned has been outside of institutions and has been outside of what we've understood to be the superior kind of authority in that space. So I do see myself actively trying to distance myself from institutions. I'm not sure how much I think I'm still contending with the idea that it's something that can change from the inside. I think it was around 2020, I'd spent at least 5 solid months calling into to city council. I'd attended all of their budget hearing meetings. I'd attended their process, their budget process. I'd attended their city council meetings. I emailed all of my city council members, and they'd still raised the police budget even after we gave them so much information about where the money should be allocated. So I do think that after that very heartbreaking incident with city council and with such an accessible institution, mind you, like I can walk up to city council, I can talk to my city council members. After seeing their ability to look me in the face and say no to something that their constituents wanted, it made me realize that being a part of that is not something I'm necessarily interested whenever the interest of the institution is not necessarily in the best interest of the people who are in it or affected by it. So I do think I'm more interested in the things alongside it while I'm still participating because I want my degree. They're paying me. I really do want my degree. I've worked this hard. I'm going to get that piece of paper, but also trying to think about what I can take from those spaces and give back to people alongside of what they're already giving me. So sorry if that was very depressing.
No, I mean, and just to, not to enter into a conversation, but necessarily in our Q&A, but that there's activism and there's talk and there's activism, right? And there's living activism, right? And so I think the thing that I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's the activism, but also the recognition of just the recognition, like seeing the actuality of the situation, right? Yeah. And having to respond. And of course, you know, you've given us these powerful, beautiful words as well, right? That also you hope ripples out, right? As yeah, and does the same thing. I think there was another question in the chat. It says, what's your favorite form?
Hi, Eunice. Yeah, my favorite form. That's a good question. Here's the thing. So my first instinct is like, oh, like I love a sestina, which is like the 6-line alternating word form. But I think I'm so interested in exploring all of the forms that spoken word has available to us. And so I think one of the ones that like I'm most interested in and most like excited by is the confessional form within spoken word and within slam. Like I see, like it's just done so beautifully and so delicately, and there's a vulnerability that like is required for the confessional form to be enacted properly. And it's one of the ones that just like inspires me and makes me want to write and makes me excited about being in community with other slam poets. So that's a good question. Confessional. Confessional slam. Any other questions?
We have a question from the classroom, and I'll repeat it if we can't. Go ahead, Sophie.
What is one of your long-time goals or dreams?
What is one of your longtime goals or dreams?
Ooh, long-term goals or dreams? That's a good question. The first thing I thought of was to be happy. I would love to just sit in some happiness. Like I just need some joy. That's long-term. That's every day we're reaching for that. But also I think one of my long-term goals is to create or be a part of a community that's sustainably thinking about the community around them, creating a mutual aid organization that is just as joyous and loving and giving as it takes to like for the people as it takes to run it. That sort of actual mutual engagement with, I love the people I'm around and I want them to be well and I want their needs to be met. And also I want that love reciprocated back to me. I'm interested in that as a long-term goal, creating that, what that can look like, being excited by that.
I see another question in the chat. It says, who are your favorite writers? And a weird question. I actually think this is also an excellent question. Can we put faith in poems? Put you on the spot on that one. But the first one was, who are your favorite writers? And then can we put faith in poems?
Okay, here's the thing. Favorite writers. Okay. This is gonna sound weird, but I really want to just amplify. I really, really want to amplify fan fiction writers. Those were the first writers that I put my heart and soul into. There's this one writer named Rainjoy who wrote like 2 1,000-word novels on like a Glee fan fiction, and it was just written so beautifully, and it was so delicate, and was never published. Just like it was like offered to the world as a PDF. And I just want to amplify like fanfic writers, folks that are writing in their bedrooms, folks that are writing like after work. I love. But also local writers like freaking Lois Gallo. And I personally want to amplify like the Black women writers in Houston. So like Ebony Stewart and Lois Gallo, Deborah Deep Mutuan. Those are my people right now. And weird question, but can we put faith? Okay, that's a good question. Faith in poems. I have this belief that like, I genuinely believe in the work of poetry, but I know poetry is not the work. Like poetry is not the work, but I believe in the work of poetry. I believe in what it can do. I believe in the power of language and how it has the ability to impact folks and how it has the ability to be a means of expression that we might not have otherwise engaged with. I believe in that work. I believe in the community building that poetry spaces can offer. I believe in the ability to be vulnerable and how that can impact. I believe in how poetry can allow us to listen and learn from folks who are writing alongside us. That's the faith that I put in poems. Not that a singular poem can do so much work. I mean, there are poems that can absolutely do that, but I'm more interested in the lifelong poem we're constantly writing alongside other poets. How one poet's work can impact another poet's work, can impact an artist's work, can impact I don't know, politician. And now these people are now thinking differently about how to engage with the world because they're more willing to listen and engage with people's thoughts. That openness that poetry requires. Yeah, the conversation in action. How am I now moved? And how do I move differently because of the thing that I just experienced? So I say absolutely put faith in poems. Even if it's just like, I want to write about like a patty melt at Whataburger. And now we are all enjoying and indulging in that amazing poem that you felt the need to engage with. And now we are that much closer to each other. We are that much more in community with each other. We relate over Whataburger or fancy ketchup or spicy ketchup. Like I believe in that sort of work, in that sort of faith. So yeah.
That's so awesome. Is there one final question? We have time for one more before we close out. Seeing none, I just want to thank you so much, Aris. We appreciate the talent that you possess and your ability to string those words together to create phrases, to create poems that are rooted in truth and ultimately unveiling deeper meaning. So thank you so much for trusting us to share your creations with us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be writing and reading and experiencing this life alongside y'all. Thank you for asking me to come.
Yes, and we also would like to let y'all know that this event will be available for playback via our Student Life YouTube channel. And if you are attending this event for Eagle Points will be awarded within 2 business days of this event. So thank you everyone for attending, and we hope to see you at the next event. And don't forget to check out to see what Aris has going on.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.